Welcome to Ride Along. I'm Joe Monahan. Today we're going to talk about an odd subject because it seems really obvious, but there is a technique involved, and especially with people in IT, they tend to ignore this a bit too often. And I think that it's something that really needs to be addressed, not because I think that I'm really good at it, but because I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be around people that are very good at it. And it's questions. The reason questions are so important is because you're gathering information that they're giving you. The same reason why you would ask somebody to fill out a form. You're trying to gather information that you don't have. I've tried to change my technique in the past few years. When you train and you're a trainer, you have slides that you have to work from and they have to get that information. So your job is to give that information, right? When I'm sitting in front of somebody and I'm trying to provide them a solution that's going to work, every environment's different. Instead of just putting all the features that I think are great on a slide, I always have a plan for each one of those features that I'm going to stop, give examples, real-world examples of where they might be valuable, and then open it up for discussion as much as possible, because I want to hear both the good and the bad on that subject. When somebody tells me, oh yeah, I know of this, let's say something like Sure Backup because I've used it, or I have people that have used it and they say it's great. Okay, that's good. Now, sadly, I expect that because I know how great of a solution it is. What I love to hear is how bad it is. The truth is, in most situations, the bad story that they're telling you is not because your solution doesn't work. It's because somebody implemented it improperly, or they're hearing it third party and somebody's lying about how your solution works. And that is a phenomenal opportunity to correct that story. I love it. I love to be able to sit there and not bash or point fingers or anything like that. I just like to say, well, let me show you, or let me explain to you, or let me give you some information that might shine a different light on the way that you look at that. And now they can take that and say, oh, well, maybe it was a misconfiguration. A better end result, in my opinion, would be maybe they had a competitor tell you a couple tall tales, and now you get to send them back to the competitor, but they now have a few doubts about the competitor's stories, and they're going to start questioning a little bit more about what they offer, instead of just taking it at face value as, oh yeah, all this is going to work the way they say. That's all I can ask. I don't have to bash anybody. All I have to do is provide information, and then they, in turn, can take it from there. Now, that brings me to how, what type of questions should we be asking? And whether positive or negative, they should be, as I always say, emotional or have impact. So, what don't you like? If I'm out to dinner and I'm sitting across from somebody and I'm asking them questions, okay? So, have you been here before? No. Oh. Are you familiar with the area? No. Oh. Well, man, if you're not, let me educate you and I'm going to give you some value. This place is known for steaks, and I'm going to tell you right now, the steaks are here are absolutely amazing. You just can't beat it. What if I had asked them what don't you like to start with, and their first thing was, I don't like meat, I'm a vegan? Well, that would have changed that whole pitch massively. So when we talk about IT, I don't want to specifically know when I start out what you don't like about what I'm providing. I want to know in general, what don't you like? If somebody says, I don't like solutions that are not secure, man, that's a really great bit of information. I mean, that's a phenomenal bit of information because they're telling me the number one thing they're looking for is security. All right? Or I don't like things that take too long to restore. Let me follow that with another question. Is there something currently that's causing things to take longer to restore than usual? And they might come back with, yes, our network has been giving us problems lately, and we're trying to figure out how we can better tune it, or maybe even, pull it all out and put something else in. We're just not sure. Well, if I would have pushed my solution in there, talking about all the speed and great things that it has, but the network is going to slow it down regardless, it almost feels like I gave them false information. I just didn't ask the right questions. That's it. Now, on the positive side, what are you looking for? What are some of the things that you really need or really want? What are some of the solutions that you've been interested in, specifically on-prem, off-prem, cloud, otherwise? And you might get somebody that just flat out says, well, we're really moving toward cloud aggressively, but I don't know if we should be slowing down, okay? So that leads you to more questions. What you're trying to do is draw out information so when you start to say, okay, here's my answer, that answer is going to come from an educated process. And that educated process means you've asked enough questions to be able to provide the answers that they need and that are going to be valuable. Not, I've asked you questions to lead you to what I want you to have. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a sales technique, and I totally understand. If I want to sell you something, I'm going to ask you yes questions to put you in the direction to where this is something that you need or want. But if I'm doing it from a passion play, okay, they told me already that this is what they want or this is what they don't want, more importantly. I now know what I should be and should not be providing them. And this can really shorten the conversation, but also bring so much value. Now, to close this conversation off, and this is something too many people don't do. Yes, I'm a technical person in a technical field, but I do a lot of lunches and a lot of dinners. Now, I come from an education background. And with my education background, my job was to take these slides and provide that knowledge to you. So I have a set amount of information that I have to provide you in a set amount of time. But when it comes to providing you solutions that you're going to use, and I know that you're going to pay for, okay? Now, I think, in my opinion, rapport is going to take you a lot further than reciting all the great technology that you have. So rapport means, what do we have in common? What are things that you and I might both like to do, like fishing, like riding a motorcycle, right? Once I start to build that rapport, and we have things that we can discuss together, we have that kind of outside of work bond, and I won't call it a friendship, but I will call it an understanding that both of us can discuss. We both have a subject that we enjoy talking about, okay? Now, let's take that a bit further. Once I've built this thing called rapport with somebody, I now have a very, very important tool that I can work with. And that tool is to know when to pump the brakes when we're on a technical discussion. So, let me give you an example. We're sitting over dinner, and we're talking about a subject, and I see that their eyes are going down to their peas and their steak, and they're not really tuned into this technical discussion. I can put the brakes on that discussion, and I can now start to bring up something like a topic we both like. I can start talking about riding motorcycles. I can talk about fishing. And we can bring ourselves back onto a level where we're both just talking. We're seeing eye to eye again. We're enjoying that moment. And if that time comes, they might say, hey, what was that thing you were saying before? They were just worn out a little bit, right? Well, why sit there and continue to push into somebody if they're worn out because you're actually creating a negative? Why not pump the brakes a little bit, give them a chance to digest the information you talked about, and then maybe you can come back to it and further that existing discussion. That tool was so valuable in a classroom, believe it or not, that I had people not just really consuming the information that I would provide, but they had very high test results shortly, and even if they hadn't sat the class in a while, because they went back and remembered some of the discussions we had outside of technology, and that brought them back to the technology discussions that were continued after the fact. So once again, building rapport with somebody is critically important, especially over lunch and dinner, because it does give you that opportunity to take breaks in a technical discussion and keep them involved. You might not ever need them, but it sure does help. But most importantly, when you build a bond like that with somebody, they tend to like you. And if they like you, they're probably going to be more interested in working with you. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of options out there, and a lot of those options work very well. So what's going to be important? Somebody wanting to work with that person in front of them. Good and bad, through thick and thin, this is the person that I want to be going through it with. So I hope that helps. Thanks for riding along. I'm Joe Monahan.